This is the Nokia 2600. No, not that 2600. This is the Nokia 2600 that we will be taking a look at today. Hey guys, welcome back to another tech show video. Today we're going to be taking a trip back to 2004 when phone manufacturers were beginning to get a little creative and branching out from the boring monochrome displays of the past. While the device we're looking at today is pretty tame in comparison to some of its peers, it still stood out as one of Nokia's first devices with a color display and apparently launched at a very affordable price, mainly from Tracfone wireless. While I haven't been able to track down the exact price at launch, one reviewer claimed that by 2006 this device was already selling for less than $20, with free text as an incentive to purchasing it. Although it sounds like they were trying to get rid of the device, it definitely wasn't a failure. The 2600, along with some of its close relatives, are number 10 on the list of all-time best-selling mobile phones. Its success, though, could be mostly due to the fact that it was pretty much a Tracfone exclusive, not because of anything special about the device. At the time, you couldn't just use any carrier on any device. You had to buy a device from the carrier, and Tracfone was taking advantage of this. They could sell devices at an extremely low cost, along with their already affordable cell service. Nokia later wanted to repeat the success of the 2600, and in 2007, began selling the confusingly named 2600 Classic, this time through AT&T. While it didn't sell as many units, it still makes it onto the list, selling 15 million units in total. Despite selling fewer handsets though, the 2600 Classic seems to have gained a higher level of popularity, possibly because of how many more features it had. But what about the 2600 from 2004? Let's take a look at what it can do. First, let's talk about the design, because this is apparently one of the most controversial features of this phone. Reading reviews about this device, many people called it ugly and said they didn't like the color. I, however, really like the way this phone looks, and if you don't like the color, you can easily replace the shell. Apparently there were some replacement shells that were sold somewhere, but I can't find much information about them aside from a couple overpriced eBay listings. But I really don't mind this iron blue color. This is the color variant my dad had back in around 2008, so there is a bit of a nostalgic factor for me. On top, there's no flashlight that you would get on many other Nokia phones. Instead, we have the release button for popping the front and back plates off. On the left side, we have two holes for connecting a lanyard. On the right side, we have another spot for connecting a lanyard and a speaker, which does get impressively loud. On the bottom, we have our typical Nokia charging port and a 2.5mm headphone port. The plastic grips on both sides of the device are nicely textured and slightly concaved to make it very comfortable to hold in the hand. Now let's take a look at some of the software features this device boasts. Turning on the device, we get the infamous Nokia startup tone. The home screen layout and design are almost identical to Nokia devices of the past, with the battery status bars on the right side of the screen, cell signal strength bars on the left side of the screen, and notifications in the upper left. One cool thing about this phone is that there are 31 different themes to choose from, the default being this clouds one. 20 of the themes have a graphical wallpaper and the rest of them are just simple colors. There are also 3 screensavers to pick from: ballistics, magic bubbles, and flying bubbles. These screensavers aren't very interesting. Magic bubbles and flying bubbles are actually the same screensaver, just one has a black background and the other background is white. I guess they weren't feeling very creative when they made these screensavers. You can't say the same about their ringtones though, because Nokia is famous for having awesome ringtones, and I'd have to agree. These are some of the most fun ringtones I've ever heard. Speaking of fun, this phone has an impressive selection of built-in games, another thing Nokia has been known for. On the 2600 we don't have Snake, but we've got Bounce, Mobile Soccer, and Millennium Mission. Now some websites I saw online said that this phone was supposed to have a game called Nature Park instead of Millennium Mission. It's not quite clear which devices have which game, but mine has Millennium Mission, which is a super fun game. In this game, you control a spaceship called the Chronocraft on a mission to seek out and destroy the aliens, who are disturbing the space-time continuum in an attempt to reverse time and invade our solar system. The gameplay is very simple and easy to learn, but it's nowhere near boring. It keeps you engaged because if you slack off for even a second, an alien spaceship will appear and destroy you. The other games, Bounce and Mobile Soccer, are also very entertaining and enjoyable to play. In Bounce, you guide a ball past obstacles and must pass through all the hoops in the level to open the door to the next level. This game, like Millennium Mission, is easy to learn yet takes skill to play. It's fast moving and each level is different. I could really spend hours playing these games. The next game, Mobile Soccer, requires the most skill to play. Even on easy mode, it took me a long time to make a single goal. But again, it's not complicated due to bad design. The gameplay is simply designed to make it hard enough that it doesn't become boring. These games are a very good example of well-made, fun-to-play games, unlike many of the crappy Java games and game demos that would be pre-installed on later devices from other manufacturers. The list of built-in apps doesn't end there though. We've got the basics such as a calculator, converter, spreadsheet, which we'll talk about in a minute, a calendar, timer, stopwatch, composer for creating your own monophonic ringtones, and a reminders app and alarm clock app. One thing this device missed out on though was instant messaging and email applications. This was one thing I saw many reviews complain about because this was something that was beginning to become more and more common back in 2004 and was even included on some budget devices from the time. But getting back to the apps that are included, most of these are pretty typical. One app that is a little different though is this spreadsheet app. Despite the name spreadsheet, this app is designed to help you keep track of your daily and monthly spendings on things such as food, transportation, entertainment, etc. It can't really do anything else with spreadsheets, so I feel like spreadsheets is kind of a misleading name. I would have named it something like expenses or expense tracker, but whatever the name, it is an easy to use app and could definitely be very useful. A more fun app on this list is Composer, which is kind of a traditional thing with Nokia and seems to have been included with many other phones at the time. It can store up to 5 custom tones and allows for 50 notes per tone. I've got to say I spent a good amount of time composing tunes on here. There are a couple other features on this phone that I'd like to talk about. I'm not sure if they're specific to this device, probably not, but they're still interesting to me. First is the always on display, which is something I didn't know existed on phones this early on. On this device, the feature is called Power Saver Clock, but I'm going to be calling it an always on display because that's what it's usually known as on modern devices. When you leave the device for a few minutes, it will go to this always on display that shows the time, date, and notifications such as missed calls and messages. There is no backlight when the always on display is active, so you'll have to move the device around a bit so that the light reflects properly on the device, unless you're outside. Another interesting feature on this device, or at least something I found interesting, is the right navigation key. And this is pretty cool. When you're on the home screen, you can press the right navigation key to open this fully customizable menu of things you might often use, but you don't want to go poking around in different menus to find them every time you need them. You can put pretty much anything on this menu, from games to sound profiles to settings menus. It's really cool. You can even change the order the items appear so that you can put the most important stuff at the top. It's a nice addition and would have definitely come in handy if there were things that you need to access quickly. One more thing about menus, I read that some people didn't like the big icons list style menu. And luckily for them, you can switch to a grid style menu if you want. And I do find this grid to be quicker and easier to use most of the time, but I prefer the big icons list just because I like the way it looks. In conclusion, this phone may not be able to browse the web or send emails, but it's got all the basics plus some fun games. If you were on a budget, this phone would have absolutely been a very solid choice as it still offered great quality and reliability. Thanks so much for watching this video. If you liked it, it would be awesome if you could become a member of the channel by subscribing and checking out some of my other videos. I appreciate your support, and I will see you in the next video.